Within 24 hours of the Switch 2's launch, hackers found the first crack. A hacker demonstrated a userland rob exploit that let him render custom graphics, a simple checkerboard, on the Switch 2 screen. This wasn't a full jailbreak, it ran in userland only, with no kernel or root access, but it proved the new console isn't completely impenetrable. Essentially, the hacker chained a series of code tricks to break out of an app's sandbox and control the frame buffer, a display output. He emphasized it's not a practical exploit yet, no homebrew can run from it, but it's a legendary start to have code execution on day one. The takeaway from week 1. Nintendo system showed cracks in its armor, even if only superficial so far. Flashcart and Bandwave, week 2. In week 2, a controversial device took center stage, the Mig Flash Flashcart. The Mig team released firmware version 1.2.0 for their card, claiming it lets you play Switch 1 games on Switch 2. They even showed video of a Switch 2 booting a Zelda Breath of the Wild menu from the Flashcart. Backwards compatibility on day 1, it got the community hyped. Indeed, user confirmed the card does load dumped Switch games on the new console. But here's the kicker. By day 12, reports flooded in that Nintendo braked their console. They actually got banned, not braked, but this is just another topic. Even if you only played your own legitimately dumped games, their system would detect the flashcard usage and permanently restrict all online features. Error code 21244508. Some folks tested the Mig card offline, but the moment those consoles went online, Nintendo server flagged them for a ban. In short, Mig Switch worked, but it was pretty much a ban guarantee. Meanwhile, modders discovered a wild Tears of the Kingdom exploit that didn't even require hacking the Switch 2 system. By using a modded Switch 1 save, they could generate crazy custom auto-built QR codes in TOTK and then scan them on an unmodded Switch 2. This trick lets Switch 2 players spawn illegal objects in TOTK, from multiple Ganons as NPCs to an infinite army of horses. It's a bizarre save-sharing glitch. Basically hack TOTK on Switch 1, encode broken builds as QR codes and import them via the Switch 2's TOTK share feature. It's niche, but fun. And notably, Nintendo hasn't patched it yet. Since its abuse a game feature, along similar lines, player found that transferring modded save files from a hacked Switch 1 to a Switch 2 works fine. For example, custom edited Zelda saves, infinite health, items, etc. carry over to Switch 2 without any issues. The Switch 2 just treats it as a normal save. So even with no native hack on the new console, save mods and exploits from last gen can cross over. Hardware breakthroughs, week 3. By week 3, hardware tinkerers and modders were making serious moves. One dedicated developer pulled off a huge feat, mapping out the Switch 2's main processor pin by pin and even teasing it to boot. This person, who chose to stay anonymous, created a full SOC pinout diagram identifying all 441 pins of the Switch 2 CPU and what they do. Power pins, data lines, interfaces, debug connections, everything was labeled. And why is that big? It basically gives hackers a blueprint of the console's brain. In fact, using this knowledge, the dev managed to trigger the chip's boot sequence by poking at a debug-related pin. They got the system to start powering on and then promptly halt. Nothing running fully yet, but a little blink of life. This wasn't running custom code or anything, but it proves that with the right pin signals, we can coax the hardware to respond. It's a classy early step towards hardware exploits, finding test pins, factory debug modes, or injection points for future mode chips. Essentially, the door isn't unlocked, but we've now got a detailed look at the lock mechanism. This kind of low-level progress often eventually leads to bigger breakthroughs, so it's very promising, and kudos to the researcher for sharing it with the community. On the storage modding front, the progress has been rapid. Since the Switch 2 uses the new microSD Express slot, which runs on a PCIe interface, modders realized they could adapt it to support standard NVMe SSDs. Within days of launch, multiple groups started designing microSD M.2 adapters to plug in NVMe drives. By week 2 and 3, we saw open source projects like SDE-X2M2 from NVNT Labs and others share schematics and even working prototypes. These adapters basically map the microSD Express pins to an M.2 2230 NVMe SSD connector, since the Switch slots already speaks PCIe NVMe natively. Early tests showed it's feasible to use a small NVMe as storage for Switch 2, with potential speed around 1 GB per second, far beyond normal microSD cards. There are some hurdles. The Switch 2 expects an insert card handshake, so the adapter likely needs a tiny microcontroller or FPGA to emulate the card's presence insert signals. But developers have planned for that, and it's all open source and collaborative. If these adapters When these adapters get refined, Switch 2 owners could upgrade to cheap high-capacity NVMe SSDs instead of buying super expensive microSD express cards. That's a huge win for homebrew and storage-heavy use cases. It's kind of amazing, barely a week or two in and people were already hooking up external SSD to the Switch 2. Expect to see community-made adapter boards available fairly soon if all goes well. The homebrew community infrastructure also started forming in week 3. A Switch 2 brew wiki popped up, compiling hardware info, firmware details and documentation in one place. It's quickly becoming a go-to knowledge base for Switch 2 hacking, great for newcomers and seasoned tinkerers alike to share findings. We also saw nifty tools, for example the Volper Octoling released a Windows utility that lets you use your Switch 2 Joy-Con as a virtual Xbox 360 controller on PC. It's a neat quality of life tweak for those who love the Joy-Con feel and want to play PC games with them. Little by little, the ecosystem of homebrew apps and resources is growing, even without a full exploit yet. By the end of week 3, let's recap the state. No custom firmware or full jailbreak is out, which is expected this early, but we've accumulated a lot of progress. We have a working userland exploit, a Flashcart that runs last-gen games, major hardware insights, and active development of mods and tools. The hacking scene is layer by layer peeling this console open. It's incredible to see so much happen in just a few weeks. Stealth flashcards and legal battles, week 4. Now, week 4 has delivered some big news and interesting twists. First up, the Mig Flashcart saga continues. Highly criticized for the ban wave, the Mig team didn't back down. Instead, they just released firmware version 1.2.1 for the card, and it's all about stealth. According to their official notes, this update brings 3 main improvements. 1. Logic change to make the Mig card behave even more like an official game card. 2. Improved compatibility for Mig Flash version 1 hardware units. And 3. Better support for trimmed ROMs. For example, game dumps that have unused data cutoff. The Mig developers even thanked team member Total Justice for helping refine the firmware. Here's the huge claim. The team says they've tested extensively and are confident that Mig Flash with firmware 1.2.1 is virtually undetectable from a real game card. In other words, they believe Nintendo servers can no longer tell if you're using a flash card or a legit cartridge. And they are even that confident that they started a bug bounty program, inviting anyone to find a way to detect the card. This is a bold statement given that just weeks ago using the Mig card got people instantly banned. Can it truly block bans now? So far, we don't have independent confirmation that 1.2.1 users are safe from bans. It is very early. It's wise to remain cautious and not assume it's 100% undetectable just because the devs say so. But if this holds true, it's a game changer for the community. The coming days and weeks will definitely bring people up that will test all of this new 1.2.1 patch. For now, it's a fascinating development. That cat and mouse between Nintendo and flashcard makers is heating up again on a brand new system. Speaking of bans, we saw an eye-opening example of Nintendo's aggressive enforcement. One user got their Switch 2 console banned simply over a nickname. In what sounds like a bizarre overreaction, a Reddit user reported their sister changed the Switch username to Link, a jokey reference to Link from Zelda, and shortly after the console was permanently banned from online. The error code matched the same 21244508 that modders saw, meaning Nintendo remotely bricked the console online functionality. And they even contacted the Nintendo support, who basically said a permanent system ban cannot be undone. If true, that's pretty wild. You would expect maybe a forced name change at worst for an iffy nickname, not a total ban. It shows that Switch 2's ban policy is extremely unforgiving. Essentially, any violation, be it using unauthorized devices, software, or apparently even inappropriate names, can result in a non-reversible console ban. The community reaction to the League incident was a mix of outrage and disbelief. Nintendo's ban practices have even drawn legal actions abroad. In Brazil, the consumer protection agency Procon SP has initiated legal action against Nintendo over its ability to brick Switch 2 consoles at will. The agency described Nintendo's EULA, which allows them to ban/disable your console if you use pirated software or accessories, as abusive. They argue that a company shouldn't be able to unilaterally revoke services or functionalities that customers paid for without a proper process. This move was likely spurred by the recent wave of bans, the Mig card situation, and the realization that that Nintendo can remotely render your $400 device semi-useless. It's kind of ironic. Nintendo, known for suing hackers and pirates, is now being sued in Brazil for its anti-piracy measures. Kroken SP has filed a complaint and given Nintendo a deadline around 20 days to respond or change its policy. Now, realistically, we don't know if this will lead to any change. Nintendo doesn't have a huge official presence in Brazil. They often operate through partners. And these EULA changes can take a long time, but it's notable that a government is pushing back on behalf of consumers. At minimum, it sends a message: breaking customers' consoles even for piracy doesn't sit well with consumer rights advocates. We will have to watch how Nintendo reacts, whether they ignore it, fight it in court, or perhaps quietly adjust their policies in that region. It's a bit of drama on the legal front that adds another layer to the Switch 2's launch story. Now, you might be wondering, part of the Mig Switch Flashcart and some userland ROP tricks, where's the real Switch 2 hack? Is anyone true close to a jailbreak? The answer is that progress is happening, but mostly under the radar. Top console hackers are notoriously secretive when working on an ongoing target. They don't want to tip off Nintendo or get entangled legally. However, insiders and rumor miles have hinted that multiple folks are deep into researching exploits for Switch 2. For instance, there's talk of a potential buffer overflow vulnerability in the Switch 2's eShop app that some hackers are examining. This came up on forums as a possible entry point. There are undoubtedly teams poking at the system software like the OS, web browsers, etc., finding glitching methods, etc. quietly. As of the 1 month mark, nothing publicly has emerged beyond that one hacker userland exploit. No boot ROM dump, no bootloader hack, no mochip announcement. And given Nintendo seriously upgraded security on this device, a full exploit might take a while, but history shows that often by the time we hear it's hacked, people have already been working on it for months in private. So I'd say stay optimistic but patient. The lack of public news doesn't mean nothing is happening. It just means the hackers are being careful and through. When or if a major breakthrough is ready, it will likely drop unexpectedly. Until then, we will keep seeing these incremental moves. Maybe another userland bug, maybe a clever safe hack, maybe hardware glitch experiments. Every layer we peel back, like that SoC pinout or the NVMe emote, brings us closer at the very end. What a whirlwind the first month in the Switch 2 hacking scene was. Holy moly. Let's put it in perspective. In just 4 weeks, we went from 0 to a ton of developments. We saw a day 1 exploit proving the console can be tampered with, we got a flashcard running last gen games on it, and Nintendo's swift backlash banning people. We found safe transfer tricks that let old mods work on the new hardware, hardware geniuses started mapping out the system's guts and even hooking up custom SSDs. We got new tools, a community wiki, and lots of knowledge being shared. And on top of all of that, we have a stealthier flashcard firmware now. A wave of console bans making headlines, and even an international legal challenge to Nintendo's policies. That's a lot of action in 1 month of a console's life. As of today, no jailbreak or custom firmware exists for the Switch 2 yet, which is totally expected given that we have the Switch 2 only for 1 month. But the progress is unmistakable. Each week there's a new discovery and feats. The hacking scene is moving incredibly fast, but also trying to stay responsible and factual. Here on this channel, I'm committed to bringing you accurate, hype-free updates every step to the way. No clickbait, no drama, just real info on what's happening. It's important to acknowledge the hard work of all the developers and tinkerers out there who share their findings with the community. Huge thanks to everyone contributing, whether it's coding, exploits, building, hardware mods, or documenting knowledge. And of course, thank you for tuning into these weekly recap of Better Gaming. If this video helped you to loop back into the Switch 2 scene, then make sure to leave a like, make sure to subscribe, and I hope I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to smile. My name is Yu. Peace!